what would your assessment be? What would you be telling people in the National Security Council right now as to your assessment of where this regime stands right now?
Well, it was a harsh speech, and it was sort of rambling as well. And it was attempting, I think, to again present this, what we would regard as a false choice between fundamentalism or some kind of chaos and an authoritarian regime. And what it didn't suggest was any sort of readiness, any real readiness on the part of the regime to respond positively to some of the demands. There was a vague talk about a National Assembly to address democratic reforms.
Michael Singh, I will stop you there. Much more analysis on Libya to come in the coming hours. That's it from this news hour for the moment, though. The weather forecast is next. AlJazeera.net/English for the news 24 hours a day.
Hello, welcome to another look at the international forecast. We're still feeling the effects of Tropical Cyclone Carlos across the northern parts of Australia. Here it is, still swirling away. We are going to see some very heavy rain for northwestern areas of Australia over the next couple of days. I should say more heavy rain, maybe as much as 500 millimetres of rainfall just along that northwest coast. You can see how it's, if anything, reorganising itself as it just sinks its way a little further southwards and westwards over the next day or two. So expect to see further flooding across those northern parts of Western Australia. Some rather sharp showers too into the interior, pushing towards Alice Springs, back up towards the Gulf of Carpentaria. Rain too, that's making its way out of New South Wales, pushing into southern parts of Queensland. Could cause further problems here just towards the Gold Coast, then Brisbane at around 27 Celsius. Could see some rather sharp showers too, making their way across New Zealand. Some heavy rain, certainly a possibility into the South Island as we go through Monday. Look further north. Here we have another tropical cyclone. This one's called Atu, just between New Caledonia and Fiji, and that's about where it'll stay. It'll sink its way a little further southwards as we go on through Tuesday. So I think at least the worst of the weather will stay offshore. For Southeast Asia, well, it's the usual crop of heavy showers to come. The wettest weather still there across much of Borneo.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines
most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
is the inside story, at this time on Al Jazeera.
As geeks take on dictators, bloggers turn dissidents, and social networks root for social justice, governments are going cyber, spying on their citizens, erecting firewalls like iron curtains, and closing down websites. We ask, is cyber-generated change virtual or real? Empire at this time on Al Jazeera.
A clear warning. One of the sons of Libya's leader vows the regime will fight until the last man standing. In the capital, Tripoli, thousands again protest and clash with supporters of Muammar Gaddafi. We'll bring you the very latest on this developing story from Libya. I'm Shihab Ratansi. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Washington, D.C. We'll also bring you up to date with the other unrest in North Africa and the Gulf, including sticking to their demands. Protesters in Bahrain camp out in the center of the capital despite orders to leave. Fighting on. Demonstrators in Yemen refuse to back down. Meanwhile, some loyalists to the country's president staged their own protests. In other news from the Americas, challenging Chavez democratically. The Venezuelan opposition retakes its place in the legislature after a 5-year boycott. The son of leader Muammar Gaddafi has warned his father's regime will fight, quote, until the last minute, the last bullet. Saif al-Islam said Libya's army is backing the authorities in the battle against ongoing protesters in the country, and he warned of civil war. Witnesses in the capital, Tripoli, earlier reported that there had been clashes between thousands of anti- and pro-government forces there. Meanwhile, members of an army unit in the eastern city of Benghazi have reportedly defected, saying they're joining the People's Revolt. A doctor there told Al Jazeera more than 300 people have been reported killed. Tom Ackerman reports.
These are the latest pictures from Tripoli, where violent clashes were reported to have broken out late Sunday in the central Green Square. Casualties keep mounting in Libya's major cities, where security forces have been reported firing relentlessly at anti-government demonstrators. International human rights groups say dozens of unarmed protesters have been killed, hundreds injured. This protester shot outside a government building in Benghazi. Another building was set afire, a scene described by a witness, Ahmed.
It's definitely burning, big black smoke coming out.
Hospitals in Benghazi reported they have run out of supplies and doctors were unable to treat all the injured. This video, which cannot be independently verified, shows the body of what protesters say is one of the foreign soldiers the government has contracted to help put down the demonstrations. In a late-night telecast, Saif al-Gaddafi, son of the Libyan leader, said reports of the violence were exaggerated. He blamed the plot by Messianic Islamists, drug addicts, and separatist groups aided by foreign mercenaries for the uprising.
Libya is not like Egypt. It consists of tribes and clans. Is not societies with parties and so on. Is parties and clans. Everyone knows their area. Everyone knows their duties and obligations. Then this could cause civil war, or may get to the civil war, back to the civil war of 1937.
Gaddafi promised to convene a national assembly within 48 hours to start working on a new constitution. Earlier, Libyan state television broadcast pictures of Muammar Gaddafi walking among cheering women and children on Saturday night. Gaddafi's son said his father will fight the protesters, quote, until the last man standing. And Saif Gaddafi claimed the army still stood behind his father, who has ruled Libya for more than 40 years. Tom Ackerman, Al Jazeera.
Saif al-Islam Gaddafi spoke for 38 minutes in what he called an off-the-cuff address. We'll hear more from that speech in a moment. But first, a bit more about him. 38-year-old Saif al-Islam is the second of 7 sons of Muammar al-Gaddafi. A fluent English speaker with a PhD from the London School of Economics, he's been described by the New York Times as, quote, the Western-friendly face of Libya. He's helped lead talks with Western governments in the past 10 years that saw Libya abandon its nuclear weapons program and end decades of isolation from the West. Now, some of the key moments of his speech earlier on Sunday.
It developed into big battles in the cities, and it became into a separatist movement, and not only threatening the cohesion of the and unity of the national unity of the country. There was a mistake from the army because citizens tried to attack the army, and of course they